Hey everybody, it's Chris with Life 180, and I am here with Mike Wolf from Mike Wolf Mastery. Thanks for being here, Mike.
Hey, good to see you, buddy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, it's been a long time since we've done this, so I'm excited to have a conversation about real estate, the state of the economy, the state of the real estate market. You are kind of my hub, my resource for all things real estate. Obviously, I do a lot of my own research, but like you have your finger on the pulse more than anybody I know. So I thought, rather than me just reading a bunch of articles and watching some videos and wrap my head around it, I just go right to the source with you because this is just what you eat, sleep,
What I do,
breathe,
it's what I live.
all that stuff. Let's start with just kind of talking about what is your overall picture on the state of the real estate market right now? I mean, because I know a lot of people are worried about, should I buy a home? Is the market going to continue to go up? Is it going to come down? What do I do? So help me out here.
All right. Well, right now things are like off the charts, crazy, ridiculous. A buddy of mine just sold his home in Vancouver, and he got 125,000 more than what he was asking, and what he was asking was already kind of like top dollar. So
Nice.
Right now, what we're seeing is we have a shortage of properties in a whole bunch of different markets.
Yeah.
We're seeing record low interest rates, and we're seeing people really bored at home. And human beings in general, we tend to have this fear of missing out, and we see, our friends are buying a home, and the homes keep going up, and we keep thinking, hey, if I don't get in now, I'll never be able to get in. And my opinion is nothing could be further from the truth than that. And but right now we definitely do have that shortage, and that is about to change in a pretty big way, because obviously right now we have a foreclosure moratorium, we have a rental eviction moratorium, we have stimulus checks still being sent out to people. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of things that are artificially keeping things afloat, and those are all, and I think they're great. I would hate to see a bunch of people being kicked out of their homes in the middle of a pandemic. Totally. That would not be good. But on the other hand, that's not going to last forever, and that's going to have a really big impact on the different markets.
So talk to me about that then, the foreclosure moratorium and the rental, like the eviction moratorium. Like, what can you explain, like what's going on with that, and how much longer you think that'll be happening? Like, when do you think that'll pivot?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you consider this, that well, let's start with the rental one, because I own a lot of rental properties, and luckily I have great systems in place, so I am getting my rent in the vast majority of my properties. But there's a whole lot of people out there that prior to COVID were sitting pretty. They had a bunch of rental properties, they had some good passive income coming in, and then COVID hit, and now they don't have some good passive income coming in. They still have their bills, the property taxes never stopped, the insurance payments never stopped, but their money coming in for a lot of people did stop. And so we're going to see a lot of very motivated sellers that they're sick of being a landlord. They're going to jump out. And that's an opportunity for people like you and I and some of the people watching this to jump in and potentially get some good deals. Whenever you have people not really happy with their results and they're just frustrated, that's an opportunity for us. So that's number one. And then when we talk about the foreclosure moratorium, well, a lot of people are just staying in their home, not making payments, and they're kind of burying their head in the sand thinking, oh, this will just go away or whatever. But unfortunately, once the banks are allowed to foreclose, that's going to start up again. And there's a whole lot of opportunity that, even if I'm totally wrong, even if not one foreclosure happens, everybody's just going to be perfect. They're all going to have their businesses are going to be up and running 100%, just like in 2019. They're going to get their job back with raises. If there's not even one more foreclosure, well, think about this. One of my favorite strategies is something called tax deed auctions. What a tax deed is, when somebody hasn't paid their property taxes in 2 or 3 or 4 years, eventually the county needs to foreclose on this property, put it on the auction block, because they use that money for their schools or hospitals or police force, etc. And so even if not one new foreclosure comes up, well, my favorite auction, which takes place in Houston, Texas, that's been shut down, I think, for 13 or 14 months. And in a typical month, let's say conservatively 500 homes change hands. So you take 500, let's say it's closed for a year, which is more than that, but let's say it's just been a year. So at the very least, there's 6,000 properties behind that would have gone up on the auction block this past year that haven't. And so for investors like us, if we know how to take advantage of that opportunity, and by the way, I've had some of my students pick up property for we're talking single family homes for $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000.
Wow.
These are homes worth 80, 90, 100.
Recently? Like during COVID?
Well, not during COVID because it's been shut down, but
shut down. We're talking before
prior to COVID.
Gotcha.
And that's just with a regular supply of properties. They managed to get that. So imagine what happens when you open up an auction that's been shut down for a year with a big backlog of properties. So even if there are no new foreclosures, which I strongly doubt, I think we're heading into a time where a lot of people are going to be in trouble, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. And there will be definitely some new foreclosures coming down the pipeline. But even if there wasn't, just the backlog of things that were in the process of being foreclosed on and things that would have been up on the auction block over this past year, that alone is enough opportunity in and of itself to launch somebody's real estate career if they haven't already gotten into real estate and they're thinking of getting in. Just that alone. So yeah, we're going to see some pretty big changes as things start to unfold, as hopefully COVID becomes a thing of the past and we get back. I was gonna say back to normal, but I guess we're never gonna go back to 2019, but whatever the new normal looks like, whatever we're heading into, and getting rid, no stimulus checks, no moratoriums on foreclosures, and tenants actually having to pay rent. That's gonna shift the markets quite a bit.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. I have a buddy I was talking to last week, and he called me and he asked me, he's like, what's your opinion on the forbearance stuff? And I'm like, well, from what perspective? Like, because depending on, who we're talking about, he's like, well, I've had my house in forbearance for, 13 months, I think he said. And I was like, whoa, like I haven't looked into it recently, but I thought the maximum was 12 months. And he actually called, the mortgage company and said that they said he could do it for up to 18 months.
Wow.
And so he's like, so I just kept it in forbearance, and this is just kind of a weird situation because he can afford to pay his mortgage right now. He's just like, if I can delay and kick the can down the road and then do a 30-year balloon payment, on what I'm behind in, and that's what the CARES Act allows me to do, I'm going to do it. It's free money because they don't charge you interest on that when you kick the can down the road and you bring inflation into the matter. So it's like, how many like kind of unintended consequences are going to happen because of all this? Because that's a huge problem.
Absolutely.
For the banks. Yeah. It's great for him, right? But it's horrible.
But imagine somebody else who maybe has been out of work this whole time and now they don't have that money to get it caught up or even get back to making payments. I mean, we're going to see so many businesses shut down temporarily that will never reopen again. There's so many people that lost their jobs temporarily that won't be going back to their jobs, and a lot of people having to reinvent themselves. And think about this: imagine that you lived in Midtown Manhattan and in your one-bedroom apartment that you're paying $5,000 a month to live in, and pre-COVID it was probably a struggle. But now imagine you haven't worked all this time. I mean, what does life look like? You can't afford to go back to what you were doing before, and a lot of these jobs are not coming back. A lot of these businesses won't reopen. So there's gonna be a lot of people having to reinvent themselves. And that really brings up an important point. And if you want to be a real estate investor, you've got to put yourself in the minds of these people. Where are they going to go to? And where they're going to go to, they're going to head to places that are affordable, and they're going to head to places where there's jobs being created. And so I think a lot of these really expensive markets and places that got hit really bad with businesses being shuttered, and the places that come to mind are immediately New York City, most of California, especially like LA, San Francisco, places that are super ridiculously expensive. And people are already leaving there before that because of the taxes and all the other craziness. But where are these people headed to? And if you can get to those places before they get there, that's where the money is. And so to me, on the East, I love Atlanta. I've loved Atlanta for many, many years because they're very strong with job creation. The government's very business friendly. And so the businesses pay very little tax, but they hire a bunch of employees that get taxed to death. And that's really good for us as landlords because we know that it's head office to Coca-Cola, Delta Airlines, Turner Broadcasting, Home Depot. The list goes on and on and on and on. And actually, just now Microsoft just made that one of their hubs. They're bringing 9,000 jobs in the very near future. And so a lot of people will be going to places like that. And then in the West, people are going, where you're at in Phoenix. They're going to Texas because they're going from a very heavily taxed place. And they want the opposite. They're going to Texas because there's no tax. they don't realize that they're paying it elsewhere, like in their property taxes, but there's no state income tax. And so they're going to Idaho. So you want to be in the path of progress. You want to get to these places before other people do, although it's right now it's kind of late to the game because these people are already making their moves, but there's still great opportunities, and those markets are going to probably head up even in light of, as things open up, even though we're going to have more supply, those markets are going to probably continue to go up. And then we're going to have markets that people are going to be leaving in droves, and those are the expensive places where just the cost of living is ridiculous and people can't really get, they can't get ahead.
Yeah. So talk to me about this, because one of the things that I like struggle with from a technical perspective when it comes to real estate is, like, I get philosophically why you're saying all the things you're saying, and I agree with them 100%. Then I get into the point where I go, well, 30-year mortgages right now are at 2 3/4 or 2.95%, and that can't, like, the interest rate environment that we're in is so low right now. That's another thing that's just been driving home prices like through the roof. And how do you think the real estate market would react? Or do you think that we're just going to remain in low interest rate environment? Like, what are your thoughts around all that? Like,
well, I think we're going to stay in relatively low interest rate environment because nobody's going to go. And I mean, when you have an economy that's very fragile to begin with, nobody's going to mess with the interest rates and start. It's not going to suddenly go to like 10%. We're not going to see that because it would kill everything. And so it will trickle upwards. It's not going to stay where it is forever, but nobody's going to mess with it and just go crazy and come up with some ridiculous rate where nobody can afford it. And so we are going to probably stay in low interest rates for a little while as the economy recovers. But there's a lot of factors. I mean, right now, low interest rates are what's inspiring a lot of people to jump in. The fact that I think a lot of people, just the fact that they've been spending a lot more time at home. It's like they're thinking, and so a lot of them are thinking, oh, well, it'd be nice since I'm here all the time to make it look nicer. And then you look at the cost of all the supplies, and to fix up your home is a lot of money these days, especially if you need lumber and other supplies. And just get labor these days is next to impossible.
Impossible. Yep.
So people are saying, oh, well, it's time to upgrade. And look at the interest rate. So we can get rid of this old home with this high interest rate and buy this other home, which is way nicer and still the same payment. So they're not really cognizant of the price. They're looking at, hey, here's what my down payment is. Here's what my monthly payment is. I can afford that, but they're not looking at the price and not thinking that 5 years from now and 10 years from now, especially in the US, it's not so bad because you guys have 30-year mortgages. You can lock that in for you can lock it in for a long term.
Yeah.
But in some other countries like Canada, where I'm from, I do all my investing in the US, but in Canada, typically the terms usually go up to 5 years. And so when that 5 years comes and the interest rate resets, all of a sudden that really affordable payment is not so affordable anymore. And so for anybody watching in the US, I recommend taking very long-term money while the rates are where they're at and locking it in. But yeah, the interest rates are definitely playing a part in this. And there's a lot of trends. Like I said, people are going to go from expensive to less expensive. And the other big trend is a lot of people are now working from home, and they're doing exactly what we're doing right now. They're on Zoom.
Yeah, totally.
They no longer have that commute. So before they wanted to be right close to downtown where they were working. And now they're realizing, hey, I don't need to be downtown. I can live out in the suburbs because I'm not going to do that commute anymore. And I can have way more house for the same amount of money and way newer, way nicer, bigger piece of land. And so there's a lot of different trends that are playing out that all got started because of COVID. And once again, if you want to be a successful real estate investor, the money is going to be following those trends and preferably coming to these conclusions before these other people realize that's what they want to do. But that's what we're seeing. And so I'm looking at a lot of cities and people are leaving. Once again, they're leaving Manhattan. They're heading out to the other boroughs, or they're going down to Florida. Or we're just seeing a lot of people making a lot of moves. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. It's going to get a lot more pronounced as all these things start to disappear, such as the stimulus packages and the moratorium, et cetera.
Yep. So you're not worried about inflation right now? You're not worried about like stuff like that and how that would impact interest rates?
Well, there's so many different factors, and they're all playing a part. Inflation's definitely a piece of it, but I think the bigger trend that's going to have a much bigger effect is just where are people living? What are people looking for right now? And people's wages will, if inflation goes up, so will people's wages as new businesses start. Old businesses are shutting down, new ones are starting up. And if they raise their prices, they're also going to be able to pay their employees more. So everything kind of stays in check in a lot of ways. It all balances out in the end. But there's certain trends that are never going to change for probably from now on. And so those are some of the things you want to be looking at and keeping an eye on, because I think a lot of city centers are going to become ghost towns, for example.
Yeah.
And we're already seeing that in some cities, and certain cities are going to have to really work hard to reinvent themselves to get people to come back there. And we're just going to see some major changes, and inflation is going to play a part in it for sure. I mean, you can't print all that money.
Sure.
There's going to be some sort of fallout from that. But in any case, I think that's amongst all the many things that are happening. That's just one of many things to keep an eye on. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and I guess from that perspective, I worry about, it's a negative and it's a bonus, depending on how you look at it. Inflation, if inflation goes up, there's a chance that they have to increase interest rates faster and higher than they want to, which is like what happened in 1979, 1980, that caused a problem. And then we had, a reset of the economy, and then the market boomed, right? So like, even if that happened, my guess is it'd probably be 12 to 24 months of hardship, and then it just skyrocket again like it did in the 80s.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's kind of interesting though, because I remember when I've been doing real estate investing for 31 years. And I remember when I got my first property, my first mortgage was 13.25%. And I was happy to get that. And I remember the day that I went to single digits, it came like 9.9. And I thought, this is like the best thing ever. And so everything's all relative. And so a lot of people say, oh, if it ever got to 7, I don't know how I'd. Trust me, when the interest rates are really high, that means the economy is booming and money is just like flowing like water. And so there's a whole lot of things. It's not just in a vacuum where, okay, the interest rates got really high, but everything else is sucking.
Sure.
Everything's all tied together. And so when that's happening, you're probably making a lot more money at your job, and a lot of different things are happening at the same time. So a lot of people they focus on that one thing. Oh, if interest rates got to this, I think I'm going to die. No, you're going to, it's all relative. Like I said, when it came to 9.9%, it got to those single digits for the first time, as a real estate investor for me.
That's funny.
It's like, I thought they were giving away money for free. How long is this going to last? And now, we haven't seen double digits in a long time, luckily. But
totally. Well, and you mentioned before, you say like right now, if you could lock in low interest rates, I would, mortgage the house for as long as you could possible.